Hello, go to the Prime Podcast. This is our 14th episode. I'm here to talk the week in consumer electronics and technology news. Today I'll be talking about things like the iPad mini event, which could be held on October 17th, as well as the new HTC One X Plus and the HTC One VX, as well as T-Mobile's plans to acquire Metro PCS to expand their 4G LTE network, Google's possible $100 Nexus tablet, as well as Tim Cook's official statement on iOS 6 maps. So let's go and get started with our first topic, which is Apple's iPad mini event, which has been rumored for quite some time now. Like ever since we started seeing some of the first 7-inch Android tablets like the Galaxy Tab, we started hearing information about a potential iPad mini. Apple has said in the past that they would never even think about launching a smaller version of the iPad just simply because it just wouldn't work. But in today's market, we're seeing devices like the Nexus 7, the Kindle Fire, as well as the Nook HD. We've seen these devices launch, and they're all really, really high-end devices that run Android that are at a very, very affordable cost, like a $20 Nexus 7. It's a lot cheaper than the iPad, but it does really compete directly with it in many ways, since it's a tablet, has all the same sort of apps, similar user interface, all that kind of stuff, and it just works. So it would really be bad for Apple not to release a smaller iPad simply because there's this whole market they aren't taking care of, or they aren't like covering. So for example, it'd be similar to if Apple didn't launch the MacBook Air, continue to launch it, and just let all these Ultrabooks just continue to sell and sell and sell. Something like that, that would really be similar to Apple not launching a smaller iPad mini. But according to multiple sources, or according to an Apple investor who has multiple sources, Apple plans to send out invitations to an upcoming Apple event on October 10th, which is and then 1 week later on October 17th, Apple will hold that event. And at that event, they'll focus on the iPad mini, which supposedly will be a smaller device at only 7.85 inches, a little bit bigger than devices like the Nexus 7, a little bit smaller than devices like the Galaxy Tab 8.9. An iPad, of course, but generally be very similar as far as hardware goes. Probably the same A5X processor, Retina-like display, cameras, and all that kind of stuff that we find on the larger 3 or 10-inch iPad or 9.7-inch iPad. But after that event, a little while later, on November 2nd, Apple began shipping the iPad Mini, and they'll probably begin their pre-orders on. Hold on. Yeah, probably the Friday after the event, so probably on Friday, October 19th, that's probably when they'll start the pre-orders on the website. So just kind of note that if you're looking to get a iPad, maybe you want a smaller one, you'll probably want to pre-order it because Apple has been known in the past to have some issues reducing these devices in such masses, like the iPad 3 or new iPad. Apple had some issues selling or continuing to sell it because they just sold so many of them so quickly. Didn't have enough produced, but according to like the Wall Street Journal, Apple's actually begun producing this iPad mini, so they'll have enough, or at least enough for a good amount of people to pre-order it and buy it on launch day, which is November 2nd. So personally, I find this iPad mini very interesting. Apple's also always focused on creating high quality products, not cheap products. Chances are the iPad mini will not be a whole lot cheaper than the iPad, the original one, but it should be smaller. So don't expect like a $200 device. That'd be pretty much impossible, or at least Apple would be losing a ton of money if they do that, and I don't think they'd really want to do that, simply because it just wouldn't make any sense at all. But actually, it is possible they would launch an iPad mini at maybe around $300, $350, and that's because if you know Apple, I'm pretty sure they're potentially going to drop the price of that new iPod Touch that they launched to let's say probably $200, match the current iPad, or not the current iPod, the current iPod, the last generation one. But that'd make it so the $200 and you get like a PMP portable media player for a little bit more money. You can go and get the iPad Mini for like $300, $350, or you can go all out and get the iPad, the 10-inch iPad, or 9.7-inch iPad for $500, maybe $400. Maybe Apple could drop the price of that iPad in order to compete with these Inner tablets that are even 10 inches. They're starting to sell for under $500. So in other words, Apple's best bet is to drop the price of the current iPod Touch and the new one that just launched. Sell the iPad Mini for around the same price as the current iPod, the newer one that came out, which is around $30, and then lower the price of the iPad, the current one, to around $400, and that would attract a lot of customers because it just makes the iPad more competitive. And even if Apple made a loss in selling the iPad, they could easily make it up with selling digital content from their iOS App Store and iTunes. So, iPad Mini, it's not going to be cheap. It's not going to be $200, but I think they're really going to do it, and it makes sense. And this is a good time over the holidays, and Apple can make a good amount of money off of that, as well as the iPhone 5, which is just launched. If you aren't really into iOS and you're looking for a new smartphone, you might be interested in these new HTC phones that are due to arrive very, very soon in the United States. Earlier this year, HTC launched the HTC One X Android smartphone, which has since arrived on both at&t and Sprint here in the United States, and it's overall still a very high-end smartphone. It just isn't quite the flagship smartphone that it was 6 months ago. But to kind of reclaim HTC's spot on the high end, HTC actually announced the HTC One X, which is their flagship phone, as well as the One VX, which will sell for less than the One X. It's kind of their cheaper, budget-oriented smartphone. So I'm going to essentially cover all three of these smartphones, the One X as well, which is an older phone now. But these three phones will make up HTC's smartphone lineup for the holiday season this year. So their flagship phone will be called the HTC One X, as the name suggests. It's overall just an upgraded version of the One X. It has a few key new features, including a pretty impressive 1.7 GHz quad-core Tegra 3 processor, as well as much more storage at 64 GB. Both of those things are things that we've never seen in the past with smartphones. That Tegra 3 processor isn't really as impressive as the 64 GB of storage. It's simply because that's just a ton of storage, and it's going to sell for the same price as probably the One X did at launch, so probably $200. And compared to that, the iPod or iPhone 5, which has 16 gigs of storage at the same price, or pretty much any other phone, 16 gigs at the same price, this One X Plus is just pretty impressive as far as storage goes. I guess HTC wants you to get all your music on it and use the Beats audio and all that to just kind of have great audio. That's one of HTC's focuses. The faster processor is kind of expected, nothing extreme there, but 1.7 gigahertz, it's pretty fast. Quad-core is pretty fast. And it also will support that quad-core processor here in the United States, which is something we haven't really seen in the past. That there'll be a 4G LTE model in the United States. It'll still support the Tegra 3 processor, which is different from what we saw with the One X, which arrived internationally with a quad-core processor, but here in the United States with a dual-core Snapdragon S4 processor. The One X Plus will be HTC's first Android 4.1 Jelly Bean device when it launches this October internationally, or in the coming months on at&t's 4G LTE network here in the United States. I did hear that I'm pretty sure I read that it'll be coming in November. That could have been just a rumor, but I guess it's guaranteed pretty much right before the holidays. That's just kind of to be expected, considering that's kind of what HTC is trying to do here. The One X is a phone that's been on the market for 6 months now, and it's a pretty good phone now. It's kind of a mid-range or upper mid-range kind of device. It has a 4.7-inch HD Super LCD 2 display at 1280 by 720. Fast 1.5 GHz dual-core processor. It's Snapdragon S4, at least here in the United States. It supports 4G LTE, 1 gig of RAM, 16 gigs of storage, dual cameras, and right now it runs Ice Cream Sandwich, but it'll most likely get Android 4.1 Jelly Bean. And you're guaranteed to find Jelly Bean ROMs on the internet if you want to root your device, get a custom bootloader, and install your own ROMs. But that's not really something everyone wants to do. At the very low end of HTC's lineup is the One VX, which will be an at&t exclusive, at least for now. It is overall a very low-end standard phone, but it's also very interesting because it's essentially what we saw on the market on the high end just last year. It has a 4.5-inch QHD display, 1.2 GHz dual-core Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 processor, 8 GB storage, a 5-megapixel camera, and generally speaking, it's kind of actually a pretty good deal if at&t can get it selling for $50 or free. But at&t will be selling the One VX from HTC in the coming months. One interesting thing is that it will launch with Ice Cream Sandwich and not Jelly Bean. Hopefully that'll change, but just so you know, this phone isn't going to be the most up-to-date phone out there, but it is just going to be a sort of a low-end device, so I guess that's not the most critical thing, but I still think it's good to have the latest version of Android. Moving on to a little bit different news, Let's go and talk about the 18 or not AT&T, but T-Mobile and Metro PCS merger because it's something that happened this week. So months ago, after the failed AT&T and T-Mobile merger, we heard reports that T-Mobile was planning to acquire a smaller carrier here in the United States called Metro PCS. Both T-Mobile and Metro PCS have been slowly losing customers and money, but maybe put them together and they can be with bigger carriers like Verizon and AT&T, and if not, there's always Sprint. So today, Deutsche Telekom / T-Mobile and Metro PCS approved a deal internally that will combine Metro PCS into T-Mobile. Overall, the deal looks very similar to what happened many years ago with Sprint and Nextel. So essentially, T-Mobile purchased Metro PCS, migrate all the customers, phones, and Spectrum all over to T-Mobile. So currently, T-Mobile has around 27 million customers. Metro PCS has around 9 million customers. Put the two together, and you got a 36 million customer network, which still puts T-Mobile significantly behind Sprint, since Sprint has about 20 million more customers, and that's just a big number. And Sprint, if you didn't already know this, Sprint's actually very, very, very far behind AT&T and Verizon. So T-Mobile probably won't be able to really compete directly with Verizon and AT&T, at least for the scale of the large network that they have. But so just kind of note that. But even though T-Mobile and Metro PCS have confirmed this deal, it'll still need to be worked out in the coming months. Unlike the AT&T and T-Mobile merger, it probably won't be canceled or blocked simply because obviously T-Mobile and Metro PCS, smaller carriers, put them together, they aren't going to make any monopoly. So T-Mobile expects this deal to complete during the first half of 2013, which is coming up very, very soon. Once the merger is completed, T-Mobile will begin moving all Metro PCS customers from the Metro PCS CDMA network over to T-Mobile's GSM network, and the process will be expected to complete in 2015. T-Mobile should be able to use the old CDMA spectrum from Metro PCS to expand their 4G LTE network. And essentially both T-Mobile and Metro PCS customers should feel excited about this merger, since both types of customers will be getting a larger and faster network for pretty much the same price. T-Mobile says that users will experience immediate benefits with this merger. But it also is important to note that I read earlier today that there are reports that Sprint might be looking to have a counter offer where they're going to buy Metro PCS, which could be interesting. That could potentially be blocked by the Metro or by the United States for anti-monopoly or antitrust laws, simply because Sprint and T-Mobile they're actually big competitors, and if Sprint acquires Metro PCS, they'll be even farther ahead of T-Mobile, and that could hurt T-Mobile. But while if T-Mobile buys Metro PCS, that probably won't really hurt Sprint much. It could hurt a little bit, but nothing major. So just kind of note that. But I personally think it'd be good for Sprint to acquire T-Mobile and Metro PCS, or come up with some kind of deal where they share an LTE network or something like that, because Sprint is really having trouble competing with Verizon and AT&T. Them having an iPhone is helping them, but they're still really, really, really far behind AT&T and Verizon, because they're AT&T and Verizon are both basically the monopolies when it comes to the cell phone market in the United States. Moving on to other news, Google is actually planning to launch a $100 Nexus tablet later this year. So in July, Google began shipping their first tablet called the Asus Nexus 7. Asus designed the Nexus 7 to be a really low-cost $200 Android tablet, and it packed a pretty good low price as well as high-end hardware that allows you to compete with other tablets that cost twice as much, for example, the iPad. So after Google announced the Nexus 7, rumors started to spread about a potential slightly larger, more expensive 10-inch Nexus 7 that will compete directly with the iPad. Google might still be working on that larger tablet, but they also are reportedly working on a $100 Nexus tablet that would make even the $200 Nexus 7 seem expensive. So essentially, Google wants to have a device for everyone, so anyone can go out and get a device. So while the Nexus 7 at $200 is still cheap, it might be a little bit too much for some people, but a $100 tablet would be cheap enough so pretty much anybody could buy it. So for example, HP, they had the touchpad at $500, they dropped it to $100 and they discontinued it, and it just sold like crazy because it hit that magic $100 price point, and Google wants to reach that price point. So along with that $100 Nexus tablet, Google could also be updating the Nexus 7 in order to make it a little bit more thinner and probably more stable as well. But both $100 Nexus tablet and the Nexus 7 will ship with new hand-sort displays. Right now we don't have much information on what each model will have to offer, but we can kind of assume, based off of the pricing, chances are the Nexus 7 will be almost identical to the current Nexus 7. With all of the bug fixes. For example, I have a Nexus 7 now, and it has some issues where the touchscreen is not the most responsive. It kind of lags here and there, but overall it's a good tablet. But this updated Nexus 7 should fix pretty much all those issues, hopefully, as well as offer a slimmer design. The $100 Nexus tablet might also have a 7-inch display, but it could be like lower resolution, maybe a slower processor. But Google and Asus will do what they need to do to make this $100 Nexus tablet a thing. Who knows, it could also be some sort of smaller device, like maybe 5 inches or something like that. But personally, I can't wait to see this Nexus tablet sell for $100. All the other tablet manufacturers are really going to have to worry about a $100 Nexus 7, because companies like Amazon and Barnes & Noble currently sell cheaper tablets for around $200. But a $100 device would really just ruin their business, because that's just half the price. And Apple, if they launch a $300 iPad, they're even in an even worse condition, because that's a third of the price. You could get three Nexus devices for that same price as an iPad mini. So, kind of interesting thing there. But let's go ahead and continue on to our last article, which is related to Apple, Tim Cook, and how iOS 6 maps fell short. So, a while back, over 5 million people ordered the iPhone 5 during the first weekend when it launched, and only but that 5 million is only a small fraction of the number of people who have upgraded to iOS 6. A total of 100 million people are now running iOS 6 as of last week. And that's thanks to over-the-air updates. They're all automatic. Everyone who has an iOS 5 device got a little notification that says you want to upgrade to iOS 6, and most people did. So that added up to 100 million people. And overall, iOS 6 isn't that huge of an update. Major generation improves the iOS operating system, adds a few new features, a few new apps, and a few improvements. And overall, it's kind of a good operating system, generally good. But there is one big thing that happened. Apple replaced Google Maps with their own Maps application called Apple Maps or iOS Maps or something like that. I don't think it has like an official name. Maybe it's just called Maps. But they basically redesigned their own application. That'll work better with things like Siri and turn-by-turn navigation, and support things like 3D map view of larger cities. You'd think that this new Maps app would actually be a good thing, but it actually has many issues. Today, Tim Cook announced that Apple is really sorry for the issues, and that Apple Maps really fell short. While Apple is improving their Maps app, they suggest that users try out other apps like Bing Maps, Maps Quest, and Waze, maybe even Google Maps on the web. There isn't currently a Google Maps app for the iOS devices right now. But one interesting thing about that is that actually Apple actually currently has 1 year left on that Maps contract with Google. So in other words, Apple could have continued to use Google Maps for another year while they perfected Apple Maps. And actually surprised Google that Apple Maps just kind of launched and Apple got rid of Google Maps. And because of that, there isn't any Google Maps in the App Store. For example, a few weeks ago, Apple got rid of the YouTube app from iOS. Google already knew that contract would be ending, so Google made a YouTube app for the App Store, iOS App Store. So they'd be ready on day one to have a new app that would bring YouTube to iOS. And because Google didn't know that their contract was going to end like immediately, or Apple was just going to jump and make their own Maps app, Google wasn't prepared enough to make their app. They had another year to make it. But I guess Google is working on it, and we should see it pretty soon. And we also should see that this iOS 6 Maps is going to be improved a lot over the next month, years, and so on. But one interesting idea that maybe Google could do, this isn't confirmed or anything like that, but maybe they could just not have a Google Maps app for iOS and instead advertise that Android is the better platform for maps and just say that that Android has good maps, Google Maps. Well, iOS has the iOS 6 maps, which isn't so good. They could do something like that to swing potential customers from getting an iPhone to getting an Android phone. Just something Google could do there, but it's not any confirmation or anything like that. So that's about it for this podcast. You can actually check us out at theprime.co. It's our blog where we write about technology and consumer electronics every day of the week. And we also have a YouTube channel right here, theprime.co on YouTube. And we upload two videos a week. One's a podcast on Saturdays. And moving on to Sundays, I actually upload a gaming video. We were doing Saints Row the Third right now. And you can just kind of subscribe for that. And if you want to hear us talk about anything, just kind of comment in the comments below. And check out theprime.co as well. And that's about it.